G'day boys and girls, something different on the bench today. I don't do Bosch tools too often. I do get asked to do them quite a lot. And so here we are, we're going to have a look at one of the new Bosch nailers. Now Bosch, so I've been told, have got a ton of nailers coming out very soon. 9 I think I heard. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I was hoping to do a framing nailer video, but it's not quite out yet. So we're going to start with the 16 gauge finishing nailer here, the GNH18V64. That's 18 volt, 64 is the maximum length of your nails. I'll give you a quick rundown of the features of the tool and the weights and stuff like that, and then we will see what it can fire through, see how tough it is, and I might try it with a few different batteries and we'll just see how we go with that. I have been told by somebody that Bosch no longer support these batteries, these old school batteries, and that they're basically only doing the Pro Core. Now that's in New Zealand, I don't know about everywhere else. So in New Zealand they're going to stick to the 4 amp Pro Core, the 8 amp and the 12 amp, which makes perfect sense to me. Why would you need a 4 or 5 or 6 and stuff when you've got that? That's a good sized battery and a good powerful battery. So I'll compare those two, the 4 and the 4, see if the old school 4 can hit as hard as the new school 4. Yep, so let's get into looking at the features. So it's a 16 gauge nailer. What does that mean? Well, it takes 16 gauge brad nails. That's what these are. 16 gauge is an archaic way of measuring these things, which I really don't like. I'll go into that a lot more. I mean, sometimes they get called 16 gauge nailers, sometimes they get called brad nailers, finishing nailers. Can be a bit confusing for people who are starting out, but I will go into that in a future video, not too far away. But that is the maximum size, 64 millimeters, 2.5 inches, and you can fit 105 of them into the magazine. They are 1.6 millimeters in diameter. The firing depth gauge is very easy to see and find and operate, which is nice. Some of them aren't the best. This is recessed so you don't bump it. It's obvious to find, so that's quite nice. I like that. I also like this. This is a really simple feature, but I like that you can just stand it up on its end, because some of them you can't do that. You have to lay them down on one side or the other, and I don't like that. I like being able to stand them like that, and then when you bend down to pick them up, it's always easy to grab, ready to go, if you're not hooking it on your belt. Speaking of the belt, if you are hooking it on your belt, the belt clip is plastic, which is a bit disappointing. It's not metal like most nail guns are. It's pretty sturdy, of course, but yeah, it's just a very small plastic belt hook. I forgot to also say the brads are angle brads. You need 20-degree angle brads for this particular tool, and they slide in simply like so. Push them in, pull back, let go, done, loaded, ready to go. If you need to get the brads back out, you need to push down on this, push your brads past. Once you've got it past that point, you can just slide them out. I'm removing them so that I can show you the feature on the front here, which is the easy jam clearance. So poof, just opens up like so, and you can open it up, get out any nails. Oh look, there's one sitting in there, ready to fire. It's got a magnet on there, that's why that didn't want to come out. The magnet helps hold it tight up against this end so that it will always fire. You don't end up with misfires as easily with the pin shooting past the brad nail. It's quite a nice little feature. Also helps when you've got not too many nails in there, or you've got a few loose ones like that one was towards the end of one of your clips and nails. Of course you can't get right down to the end of a clip and nail because you can't dry fire, because it will lock out once you get down to a few nails. I'm not sure how many yet. I will tell you that perhaps later in the video. It's very narrow through the magazine area, yet quite bulbous in the head department. But there's nothing else protruding out the sides of the tool like some nailers these days. So it's a nice streamlined tool, even if it is a bit bulbous in the head. I'll just show you what I mean compared to some other nailers. If we take a look at this Hikoki and this Milwaukee here, you'll see that they're not very streamlined at all. They've got a big bulbous lump coming outside. Why is that? See, both the red one and the green one, big area here, as well as up here. They've also got this, whereas the Bosch doesn't have anything down the bottom there. It's all contained in this top sort of head unit. And why is that? Well, that's because they're very different systems. They're completely different designs, really. The Bosch uses a flywheel type design, so that differs from these other two in that these have an air cylinder in here. So this has got a cylinder in here and a motor in this side bit. So that's why this has the side bit and the Bosch doesn't, because the Bosch has this bit up in the top of the head unit here, whereas this head unit is all a gas cylinder. So that effectively works like a pneumatic nailer in that it's powered by the air pushing it forward, whereas this one has no air cylinder in it. It is done with springs and a flywheel, and you'll notice one big difference that this does that these other gas cylinders don't when I start using this tool in a moment. Is this system lighter than the air cylinder system? Well, no, this is 2.9 kgs, so is the Milwaukee. Without a battery, those two are the same weight. Right, let's now turn it on. So to turn it on, down by the battery here, we have an on-off button. Now this is the GNH18V64, which only has a button to turn it on and the same button to turn it off, and that's it. It's only got one mode, so it is full actuation mode. You have to depress the tip of the tool and then pull the trigger for every single nail. There is no bump fire, but that's a bit of a New Zealand thing. There's some people that think that you're not allowed to use bump fire in this country, and so lots of companies don't import bump fire tools. Some do, but we'll get to that in another video. So if you get the GNH 18V-64M, it's got an M on the end, M for madness, then you have bump fire mode, so that you can just hold the trigger and just go bang 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 every time the tip actuates on your piece of timber. It will fire a nail. But unfortunately I can't show you that mode because this one does not have it. But let's see what it can do. Let's see what we can fire into, how well it sinks the nails, what it can go through. Can it go through hardwood? Can it go through bamboo composite board? I don't think I've got any LVL laying around at the moment, but we'll see what I can find and we'll do some tests. 16 gauge finishing nailers are often used for doing skirting boards, architraves, door frames, stuff around windows. Usually used for internal finishing off, hence why they get called finishing nailers. It's not for building the framework of your house, which of course is a framing nailer, which is 10 gauge, not 16 gauge. And this particular finishing nailer has a no-mar piece of rubber that goes over the end of the foot there. You can use it with or without that. The foot's not very damaging anyway because there's no sharp bits on it, but because it's this design of foot, it means you can't get it on an angle very well. You can't fire into a tight corner or anything like you can with some nail guns. So we'll see how that goes. Personally, I'm not a fan of this particular shape on a nailer for two reasons, which we'll get into once we start firing. Now I think we'll just start straight on the 64mm nails, which is the longest, of course. As well as doing 64 though, it does do 32, 38, 45, 50, anywhere between 32 and 64 will fit in this tool. Doesn't really matter what length they are because the heads catch at the top and run along a rail. So slide them in and they will stay at the top there. Push it down a bit, pull your lever back here. It now has locked those nails into their firing position. We'll turn on the tool. I'm now going to fire it through some pine flooring into some pine framing. So I'm going to stick this board on the bottom just so it doesn't go through into my bench. This is treated 45mm thick pine. This is 20mm treated pine flooring. I'm going to fire through that. In theory, it should not quite come out the other side if we get the nails flush on the top. We'll start with the setting on its highest, in other words the least amount of penetration into the timber, and then we'll wind it down and make sure that it will sink them good and deep. Now, do we need air protection? And what sort of funny noise is this about to make? And notice there's a little sort of whoop fan sort of noise, and then a bit of a ring afterwards as well. That is because of the flywheel design. You don't get that noise with a air cylinder type tool. But as I was saying, the air cylinder tools have that piece out the side which limits you from doing certain things. This tool, good for left and right handed people, because you can go along a baseboard, skirting board and nail like that, or flip it over the other way and nail like that, and you don't have any big bulbous thing in the way, which for a lot of people would be a big selling point, because yeah, the Milwaukee one you can only do one direction, so it's kind of designed for right-handed people. Basically you need to go along that direction. You can't flip it over and come back this way along a board, because it's just, you can, but you'd have to have the tool on an angle like that. You can't have it sort of flush with the floor. Right, so looking at those first few nails, they're up by about 1/4 of an inch, about 6 millimeters. So is that ringing noise? That's the springs in here. Would be fun to pull this apart one day and have a look at it. So I will now wind it down. We'll wind it to approximately halfway, I'll guess it. So let's try it about there. Go again. Yeah, so just a few millimeters up now, and now we'll try it on the full depth. Wind this as far as it will go. When you wind, you see the whole nose area there, the little foot moving up and down. So the closer it is to the tool, the deeper your nail is going to go in. Will this sink it good and proper? Yes, it will. Not by a huge amount though. We're talking only about 1 millimeter below the surface. Mind you, that's pretty much perfect. That's basically exactly what you want. Perfect for filling there now, and it hasn't left too much damage. Probably not too clear on the camera, but you can see the firing pin mark either side of the nail. It doesn't go too far past, which is nice. Some nailers leave a big line where the striker has hit, but this striker is not too much bigger than the head, and yeah, quite a nice finish, and they are sunk in there good and proper. But will it sink any deeper with a Procore battery? Well, we're about to find that out. The 4 amp hour one is just charging up because I saw that it was flat. So in a moment I will test that with 4 amp hour Procore, and we'll see if we can get those nails in any deeper. One way to get them in deeper, of course, is to take off this Nomar tip here. So if we take that off, if you want to get a bit more penetration, you should get another couple of millimeters now. Most definitely. Looking at these here, the ones on the right are the ones with the Nomar tip, and on the left without the tip, and looks to be another millimeter or so of penetration. Left a bit bigger mark, bit bigger recoil as well on the tool when you're using it. Whilst I'm waiting for that battery to charge, I'm going to go and try one of these, the Diablo sand net on the Bosch sander here. Been reviewing this for the last few weeks. Saw it at Bunnings cheap one day and thought I'd give that a whirl, and it's a nice little sander. So if you're interested in the review on that and how good these go, they're meant to last 10 times longer than a standard sanding disc, then make sure you are subscribed, and there'll be links and stuff. And yeah, this video might be out, I think, shortly after the Bosch nailer. So if you like the Bosch stuff, there is more coming, so make sure you're subscribed. Such as this. While we're on Bosch, you can now get the StealthMounts for Bosch products. So you can get these battery mounts, and you can get tool mounts. If you're interested in those, take a look down in the description. I'm going to have to buy a few more tools and batteries to fill mine up. Right, let's try the 4 amp hour Procore. Does look to be just a tiny bit deeper. Let's try the 8 amp hour Procore. Hard to say, doesn't look like there's much difference. And the big boy, the 12 amp hour. Okay, let's see if we can actually find any differences here. .87 with the 4 amp hour with the Nomad tip, 1.48 without the tip, and then the Pro Core 1.3, then the 8 amp hour Pro Core 1.6, and then the 12 1.7, the next one 1.88, 204, slightly 1.66. Yeah, there's so little in it, and it's, you know, there's enough variation to not really be able to tell any difference at all between the standard 4 amp hour battery and the Pro Core batteries. So that's good, because it means you can use a nice light battery. You can use this, or you can use that. That would be my battery of choice probably for this particular tool. It's not too big, not too heavy, and yeah, they're all going to hit the same. How do they hit though? Through bamboo composite board. Right, this stuff is hard. Everything has trouble with this stuff. It destroys drill bits, destroys blades, destroys router bits. It is horrible stuff to work with. 4 amp hour Pro Core battery, full depth, 64mm nails. It's not bad considering how evil this stuff is. So they're not quite seated, but this stuff is so horrible. It is worse than shooting through hardwood or anything. Or is it? Let's shoot through a piece of Vitex. 19mm Vitex into pine, 64mm nails. Yeah, did that pretty sweet. Looks exactly the same as the pine into pine. That's good, son. How about pine into Remu? That's something that you'll have to do if you are a renovator or you do any sort of repair work in New Zealand. There's a lot of hardwood framing, a lot of Remu framing, so I'll go find a piece of Remu and we'll fire that. That'll be a good test. So I found a scrap piece of Remu. Remu is one of my favourite looking timbers. It's a native New Zealand timber. It takes a long time to grow, and a lot of places, a lot of houses used to be built with this stuff back in the olden days before they banned chopping such beautiful timber down. The house I'm in right now, the framing, some of it is Remu, and all the weatherboards on the house are made out of this. Just criminal that they're painted over this beautiful timber. But it is very hard to work with once it's dried out. When it's fresh and you're using it, not too bad. But after 40 or 50 years of it being in a house and being all dried up, it does split very easily when you try and fire nails into it, or screws or anything. You always need to pre-drill things and stuff. But we're going to see if I can drive nails into this through a piece of pine. So once again, here's our pine flooring, our piece of Remu. We've got 64mm nails, the 4 amp hour battery, Pro Core. Go! Wow. Well done, Bosch. It made it in. It's done tight, yep. So not a lot of difference. They're not seated quite as deep, but they are below the surface, which is of course the main thing. Let's see if we can fire at full depth directly into the Remu. Now, never mind about these. These are the 3 nails that I just pulled out of that piece of pine. This is the actual You can certainly feel the recoil, and you can see it even starting to split the timber there too. We're right on the brink of it there. It's gotten that one almost flush, that one almost flush. The third one that has split the timber is protruding a little bit. So that's pretty impressive. That nail comes down here somewhere. So that's done pretty well. Such a thin nail, managing to get through all that hard timber with no air or anything pushing it, no gas. Very impressive indeed. Just an 18 volt battery and a funny whirring noise. Now the whirring noise, that is one of my things I don't like about this tool. Two things I don't like about it. But before I do that, I'm going to fire this through some Quila because I need to do that for a job, so I'm going to see if it can handle that. I've got an offcut here of some Quila flooring overlay. It's solid, it's not laminated. And it is 13 millimeters in thickness. So can the 64 millimeter nails go through that into pine with 4 amp hour battery? No problem at all. They are all below the surface. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed with the power of this. It's right up there. So what are the two things I don't like about it? I'm not too keen on this foot, because if you want to try and do anything on an angle, you lose quite a lot of depth. See, that hasn't gone in. When you depress it, it cannot get close enough. I'll just take the battery out for a second. So you depress it. As you see, if you depress it on an angle, you've got that big gap it's got to overcome, and the nail can't do that. It's going to end up left protruding like these ones are, which, yeah, is slightly annoying, because it's okay if you're doing most stuff, you just turn it flat on the surface like that, but I like to use a 16 gauge nailer for all sorts of things, and that just puts me off a little bit. Also, the other thing is something you will have been hearing, of course, all through the video, and that's the noise of actuating this thing and hearing it spin up. So yeah, that noise there. Somewhat annoying to me. Some of you might not care too much about that. Those are my only two real issues with it. I quite like the balance of it. It's a little bit top heavy, but it is nice not having that piece down the side like the Milwaukee has. But the Milwaukee does have the tip that I like. Just show you that quickly to show you what I mean. The Milwaukee doesn't have that big foot like the Hikoki and the Bosch do. It's got this rather small one, so you can angle it much better on lots of different angles and still get good penetration. But it does have this big monstrosity of a thing sticking out the side, and because that's there, it also means that the magazine itself is not only angled to 20 degrees, but it's angled out from the tool. So if we look at the tool front on, you'll see the big red bulge out the side with the motor, and the magazine is sticking out on the right hand side, particularly towards the back, whereas the Bosch is much more streamlined, nothing sticking out either side, which is nice. Stands nicely on the batteries like that too. It's good and solid, so you can stand on the battery, you can stand it on its head. I like that because, yeah, like I said, the Milwaukee one's not great for, you got to lay it down all the time or hook it on something. So that's the Bosch Professional Blue Heavy Duty GNH 18 volt 64 or 64M if you want the bump fire model. Let me know what you think of this down in the comment section. If you want to see more Bosch stuff, let me know that down in the comment section as well. And I do have some more, like I say, I've got the sander, I've got a rivet gun, got a couple of other things coming up. I would like to do some more nail gun videos once they release them. It'd be good to do a whole range of the Bosch ones, just like I might be doing a whole range of another brand very shortly. So, thanks for watching, guys and gals. I will see you on another one real soon. Cheers.